They killed my mother on the street she walked every morning, unarmed, elderly, beloved by everyone. 2 racist cops. 1 trigger. No remorse. But what they didn't know is that her son was a Delta Force legend, and I was just seconds away. What happened next shook the entire justice system to its knees. Story details as follows. You never forget the sound of your mother's voice, especially when it's the last thing the world ever hears from her. Her voice wasn't loud. Never had been. Mama had this way of speaking like gospel water running over river stones, soft, steady, and real. You didn't argue with her not because you were afraid, but because you felt ashamed if you disappointed her. She didn't believe in yelling. She believed in standing tall, chin-up words measured heart full. And that's how she walked every morning, always at 8 a.m., rain or shine. That day wasn't different. Not to her, but to the world. It was the day it lost its soul. I had just landed at Fort Bragg, 3 months embedded in Syria, pulling intel from caves where sunlight hadn't touched since the Bush administration. My hands were still dusty from sand and gunpowder. My mind was still cloudy with explosions and ghost voices on encrypted comms. But I was home, and she didn't even know I was coming. I had this whole plan. Surprise her. Hug her from behind while she tended her rose bush in the front yard. Then cook breakfast for her the way she used to for me, grits, bacon eggs, sunny side up, and that sweet tea she swore would cure heartbreak, cancer, and racism if you drank enough. Instead, I got a call from Jalen, little dude down the street, barely 13. Mr. Marcus, some cops, they got your mama, man. The call cut off. I redialed. No answer. I grabbed my duffel, sprinted to the Jeep, and floored it. 10 minutes. That's all I was away from her. 10 minutes between my boots hitting American soil and the world turning to ash. Jalen had live-streamed the whole thing. His hands shaky, his breathing panicked, but it was all there. Crystal clear. Mama, in her Sunday coat, walking slow with that old cane of hers. Blue shawl on her head, like always. Her brown skin glowing in the morning sun. 2 white officers in a cruiser yelling something from their window. Something about a match for a suspect. Mama kept walking. They jumped out. One of them, Officer Griggs, blocked her path. The other, Officer Dent, was already reaching for his belt. "Ma'am, stop right there." I said, "Stop." Mama's voice, calm. "Sir, I ain't done nothin'. I'm just going to the store." Griggs moved close, too close. Mama backed up, one hand raised slightly palm out, not a threat. Never a threat. "You black people always think you're above the law," Dent spat. Jalen's camera shook, then stilled. Then silence. Then the gunshot. By the time I reached the scene, yellow tape tangled the block like some damn spiderweb. I didn't see her body, just the white sheet. I stepped forward. "Sir, step back. This is an active crime scene," a uniform said. I didn't even look at him. "Move," I said. "Sir." I turned. My face must have told him everything. He backed off. I knelt beside the sheet. My knees sank into the blood-stained concrete. My hands trembled. But I didn't cry. Not yet. My hand reached under fingers, searching for hers. I found it. Cold. My mother's name was Loretta Daniels. She was 72. She baked pies for the whole damn neighborhood every Christmas. She helped clean the church steps every Sunday. She taught half the kids on our block how to read, including the ones whose parents were too drunk or too gone to care. She never broke a law in her life, and now she was gone, because 2 men with badges decided her life was a question mark they didn't need to answer. The mayor made a statement 2 hours later. We are reviewing body cam footage and will follow all standard procedures. Standard procedures? You know what standard procedures got us in Iraq collateral damage. And that's exactly what they called her. A casualty. Unfortunate. Tragic. But maybe understandable, they said, depending on the context. Context. The only context here was fear, their fear. Fear of her strength, her stillness, her refusal to bow. That night, I sat on the porch of our home. Hers, really. The porch light still flickered like it did every evening at dusk. She said it was so the lost could find their way home. I didn't sleep. I couldn't. I watched the live stream over and over. Jalen had posted it to Facebook, TikTok, Twitter. It was already spreading like wildfire. But the department labeled it inconclusive. They said the video lacked context. My mother died on live stream and they still didn't believe it. That's when something broke inside me, not the soldier part. He'd been broken a long time ago. It was the son who believed America was worth fighting for. That justice would show up if you just waited long enough. That son was gone now. Only the man remained. And that man would not wait. I knew the streets. I knew the layout of the precinct. I knew their shift rotations, their radio codes, the loopholes in their body cam systems. I'd trained foreign allies on how to dismantle corrupt governments from the inside out. I didn't want vengeance. I wanted truth, and I was going to get it. But first, I needed her voice again. I dug through the old answering machine in her kitchen. Pushed play. Hi, baby. Just making sure you're eating right. I left a pie in the freezer. Love you always. Call me. Her voice, soft, steady, not broken, not scared, not screaming, just Mama. And as I stood in that quiet kitchen, the smell of cinnamon and coffee still lingering from days ago, I whispered back to her through gritted teeth. I'm here, Mama, I'm here now. And this time, I wasn't too late. I've stared down warlords in Afghanistan with rocket launchers aimed at my chest. I've rappelled into enemy territory at night with nothing but shadows for cover. I've cleared rooms where every second was a coin toss between death and survival. And yet nothing in all my years in Delta Force prepared me for the sound of my mother's cane clattering on concrete after she was shot. They say soldiers are trained to compartmentalize, to tuck grief into sealed boxes and keep moving. And maybe that's true. Maybe that's why I hadn't cried. Maybe that's why I hadn't screamed. Not when I held her cold hand, not even when I saw the live stream for the third time, knowing full well she died afraid and alone. But that box inside me where I'd locked away every bullet wound, every fallen brother, every sleepless night, it cracked the moment I stepped into her house and her smell was still there. I dropped my duffel at the door and walked through our memories. The wooden cross above the kitchen doorframe she'd never take down. The half-eaten lemon pound cake she'd made for the pastor's visit. The photo of me in uniform, covered in dust and blood from my first tour, framed like it was the damn Mona Lisa. This house was a fortress of warmth, and now it felt like a mausoleum. I collapsed into the recliner, her recliner. It still had the little floral quilt she used to keep over her knees. That's when the dam finally burst. Not a sob, not a wail, just silence. My face wet, my body shaking. Delta Force doesn't break, but suns do. I spent that night watching everything. The live stream, the news coverage, the carefully worded incident report from the police. It said a confrontation occurred, and the suspect exhibited suspicious behavior. Suspect. They called Loretta Daniels, a 72-year-old church mother in a blue shawl, a suspect. I remembered my training, always verify your source. So I dug deeper, and what I found made me sick. The department had scrubbed their database of the officer's prior misconduct reports. But I'd learned how to retrieve erased data in war zones, and I wasn't about to let these cowards bury my mother under bureaucracy. I pulled out my laptop and began scanning backup servers, tracing call logs from their patrol vehicle. And that's when it showed up. Griggs and Dent had 11 excessive force complaints between them, 5 involving black elders. None led to suspension, but this time they picked the wrong woman, because her son didn't wear a badge. He wore war. By dawn, the streets were buzzing. Jalen's video had hit 1 million views. Hashtags were trending. Justice for Loretta. Say her name. Blue violence. People began gathering outside the precinct. Quiet at first, then louder. Angry. Unified. I put on my boots. Not my military ones, my street boots. Mama always said you walk different when your feet remember home. I wore all black. No insignia, no delta pins. Just a man. The crowd parted when they saw me approach the precinct steps. I wasn't famous, but I was recognized. Everyone knew Marcus Daniels, the soldier, the local boy turned national ghost. People whispered. Some tried to hold me back, but grief made my path straight. Inside, the front desk officer blinked when he saw me. Can I help you? You can start by telling me where the hell Griggs and Dent are. They're not here. Administrative leave. Of course, I muttered. Cowards always get a vacation after murder. He flinched. Sir, I'm going to have to ask you. You're going to do nothing. And you're going to listen. My voice didn't rise. It didn't need to. I leaned in close. I've kicked in doors in Kabul, and I've dragged bodies out of collapsed buildings. But this is personal. So tell your captain he has 48 hours. Then the entire country sees what I found in your servers. I walked out before he could blink. Outside, a reporter shoved a mic in my face. She was different, young, black, bold. Eyes filled with fury and focus. Mr. Daniels, do you believe this was racially motivated? I believe my mother was executed for walking while black. The mic trembled in her hand. She whispered, I'm sorry. I'm not looking for sorry, I said. I'm looking for answers. She pulled me aside. My name's Naomi Price. I'm not with the local news. I'm with WNCB National. I've been tracking Dent for 6 months. I looked her over. She meant it. You want to help me? I asked. I'll risk my career to bring them down. Good, I said, because I'm about to break everything. We met that night in a parking lot near the local VA building. She brought files, witnesses, complaints, internal memos. I brought what I'd retrieved erased body cam logs, radio chatter, and GPS logs that contradicted every line in the official report. But there was still one thing missing. The footage, the real body cam clip. The one no one had seen. She looked me dead in the eye. It's stored on their secure internal server. Only captains and evidence officers have access. I nodded slowly. I've taken intel from bunkers surrounded by landmines. I think I can handle a server room behind a Pepsi machine. Naomi smirked. You're serious. I'm deadly serious. That night I broke into the precinct. Not through the front. Through the vents. I remembered the floor plan from a blueprint Mama kept from her days cleaning the place. She always said, even crooked buildings leave honest blueprints. I slid in, breathing slow. I bypassed motion detectors, looped CCTV feeds, and crept past the break room, where 2 officers watched a game show. I reached the server room. I had 9 minutes before the loop reset. Plugged in my extraction drive. Entered the credentials I'd reverse-engineered. Footage recovered. Timestamp 7:59 a.m. Location 23rd and Crossburn. I clicked play. There she was, Mama, holding her cane, smiling faintly at a little girl across the street, humming something probably amazing grace. Then the officers pulled up. Griggs stormed out. "Hey, you match a suspect description. Stop right now." Mama turned slowly, no aggression. "I ain't no suspect, son. I'm Loretta Daniels. I'm just—" Dent interrupted, hand on his taser. "Don't get smart, ma'am." She stopped. "I'm not getting smart. I'm getting groceries." Griggs shoved her. She stumbled, but stayed upright. "Stop resisting." "I'm not resisting." Dent grabbed her wrist. She panicked, tried to pull back, lost her balance. Fell. Head hit the curb. She lay still. And that's when Griggs muttered under his breath. "Should have stayed home, Grandma. No CPR. No call for backup. Just silence." Then they placed a call to dispatch suspect down. Aggressive behavior. Attempted assault. My hands clenched the screen so tight the laptop creaked. I whispered, "You bastards." I uploaded the footage to every outlet, every server, every media source Naomi had ever worked with. Then I stepped outside and looked up. The sky was dark, but morning was coming, and the world was about to see what justice looked like. There's a moment in every battle where the smoke lifts and you see who's really standing with you. I thought I knew my hometown. Thought the people on my block, the neighbors who smiled at Mama's pies and waved when I came home on leave, would rise up like I did when they saw what happened to her. But truth is a jagged mirror, and sometimes when it shatters, you realize folks were never really looking at you, just the reflection they wanted to see. By the next morning, the footage had exploded online. CNN ran it. So did MSNBC. Even Fox called it disturbing. Hashtags were trending. My mother's face, still and sacred, was plastered across the country. But here, in this town, silence. No candlelight vigil. No police apology. No church leaders taking a stand. Just silence. And I'd seen this before. In Fallujah, the day after we cleared a village. We saved civilians, burned insurgent weapons, thought we'd done right. But the next morning, they rebuilt what we tore down because fear has roots deeper than hope. I walked into Mama's church that Sunday. Same old pews, same stained glass window behind the altar, same Reverend Ellis with his pressed collar and cautious tone. He saw me walk in and froze mid-sermon. Brother Marcus, it is an honor." I sat in the front row. Alone. The same row Mama always sat in. The congregation kept their heads down, like I was contagious, like grief was catching. After service, I approached him. "You didn't mention her name once." "She was a dear soul. Marcus and I grieved too." "Then why didn't you say it?" He looked at the ground. "These are delicate times. We must let the process unfold." Delicate times, I cut him off. My mother's skull was cracked open like fruit on that pavement. "And you want delicate." "Marcus, please." I leaned in, close enough for him to smell the dust on my uniform. "She loved you. Tithes, baking choir, you name it. And now you can't say her name." He swallowed hard, but said nothing, and I walked out. Naomi met me at the diner 2 hours later. I sat at a booth that used to be our spot, me and Mama, every Thursday. She slid into the seat across from me. Her eyes said what her mouth hadn't yet. She was angry too. "They pulled the footage off 2 local stations," she said. I blinked. They pulled it. Pending legal review. The police union filed injunctions. I laughed, sharp and dry. Of course they did. She slid over a paper file. But I still got this. 2 more officers who filed complaints against Griggs last year. Internal retaliation buried them. I scanned the documents. She was right. 2 officers, both rookies, claimed Griggs fabricated arrests and doctored reports. Nothing came of it. Both were reassigned. They ever speak on the record? I asked. She hesitated. They're afraid, threatened with job loss. One already moved to Tennessee. I looked outside. The street was quiet. Too quiet. They're all scared, I said. Yeah, she whispered. But you're not. We decided to confront the precinct publicly, not in secret this time. Out in the open. I stood at the steps of the courthouse 3 days later, Naomi by my side, a microphone in my hand, and every camera lens in town pointed at my chest. People gathered, hesitant, curious. Some came with signs. Others came just to watch. My name is Marcus Daniels, I began. Son of Loretta Daniels, Delta Force veteran. And the only reason I'm speaking today is because silence kills more slowly than bullets. I held up a flash drive. This contains footage your police department tried to erase. Footage of my mother, elderly, unarmed, peaceful being shoved to the ground by Officers Griggs and Dent. Her death wasn't a mistake. It was a pattern. Murmurs rolled through the crowd. I risked my life overseas for this country. My mother gave her life right here at home. And the question isn't what happened. The question is, what are you going to do about it? Then I walked away. No chance, no applause, just breathless silence. But silence can be a crack, and cracks grow. That night, my house got vandalized. Spray paint on the porch. Traitor, liar, go back to war. The flowers she planted were stomped flat. I stared at the mess for a long time. No anger, just numbness. Then I saw something under the porch light. A note, scrawled in pencil. I believe you. I saw everything. I'm sorry I waited. MJ, Jalen's older brother. Malik. He worked in sanitation, had always kept his head down. But now, he was stepping up. The next day, I walked into Naomi's motel room like a storm. She was hunched over a laptop. I got something she said. I stopped cold. What? A voicemail from one of the officers who moved out of state. He changed his mind. She played it. A man's voice shaking. This is Officer Raymond York. I was stationed at East Precinct 2 years ago. I saw Dent plant evidence once. I reported it. I was reassigned within a week. Griggs told me if I ever opened my mouth again, he'd make sure I disappeared. I sat down hard. They built a kingdom, I said. She nodded. But you just lit the fuse. We sent the voicemail to 5 national outlets. Within 12 hours, York was on TV, blurry face, voice disguised, but telling everything. And that crack, it became a fracture. A crowd gathered outside the police department. Bigger this time. Louder. Mixed races. Mixed ages. Even a few officers from other counties joined in solidarity. The town was still divided, but something had changed. Not everyone was looking away now. Then came the twist I didn't see coming. A letter slid under Naomi's motel door. No signature, just a single line. Check the old evidence locker basement level. You'll find what they hid. We looked at each other. She reached for her car keys. Time to dig up some bones, she said. I looked out the window. The motel's flickering neon sign buzzed like a warning. And deep in my gut, I knew this wasn't just about Mama anymore. This was about an entire system that had survived on silence, but not anymore. The old precinct basement smelled like mold, rust, and forgotten sins. We slipped in, after hours, Naomi and I, through the back fire exit. Naomi picked open with a tension wrench and a hairpin. It wasn't her first time trespassing. She looked nervous but focused. I'd seen that look before. In soldiers. Right before a breach. I led the way. Even in total darkness, the instincts didn't leave me. I knew how to feel the air. When to freeze. When to step. We passed old lockers with busted hinges, abandoned filing cabinets, broken chairs. This place was where careers came to die, or be buried. According to the anonymous letter, the evidence locker we were looking for hadn't been accessed in years. Too far down the records chain to trigger alarms. Too inconvenient for anyone to bother sealing. But someone wanted us to find it now. The key was a small door tucked behind the boiler. Inside, a dust-covered metal cabinet padlocked. I gave Naomi a look. She handed me a crowbar. 10 seconds later, the lock snapped. And inside, hell itself. There were 3 hard drives, no labels. One marked internal training, one labeled Griggs D, and the third no label at all. I plugged them into my portable reader. No network, just offline. Safe. The internal training drive was full of videos, police role-play exercises, de-escalation walkthroughs. But on closer inspection, they weren't teaching de-escalation. They were teaching officers what to say on camera after excessive force. Scripts. Memorized responses. Code words like furtive movement, refused verbal commands, unpredictable behavior. I felt bile in my throat. These weren't bad apples. They were trained actors. The Griggs RD drive had personal folders, photos, text messages, and a folder marked unsent reports. Inside were files on 2 other incidents. One showed Griggs assaulting a homeless veteran, choking him behind the station dumpster, then faking a report that said the man lunged. The video was never logged. The second showed Dent in a high-speed pursuit, but the footage revealed there was no pursuit, just Dent chasing a teenager on a bike, then slamming him into a mailbox. This town had rot under the foundation. But the last drive, the unmarked one, that was the bomb. It took a minute to load. Then static. Then video, body cam footage. Different angle than the one I'd leaked before. It showed the scene from Dent's chest cam. And it revealed everything. Mama was already on the ground. Dent hovered over her. Griggs stepped out of frame. Then a third officer entered, unidentified. Face partially blocked. He looked down at her, then at Dent. You know, this is bad, right? Dent didn't flinch. She hit her head. Ain't our fault she fragile. The third officer hissed. She didn't move. I saw the whole thing. She didn't resist. Dent looked at him long. You want to keep your job. Silence. Then the third officer turned and walked away. That was it. But that 3-second exchange changed everything. There had been a witness, a cop, one of their own, and they had silenced him. We copied everything, every file, every second. Naomi backed it up to 5 different encrypted clouds. I locked a copy in a flash drive I wore around my neck. Then we left. No words, just fire in our veins. The next morning, we released the second angle online, this time with annotations. Paused at each frame. Translated their body language, highlighted discrepancies. The reaction, nuclear. News outlets couldn't bury it. The governor issued a statement. A civil rights task force announced an official investigation. People flooded the courthouse lawn with signs that read, "Loretta wasn't a threat. Protect us, not kill us. We're not going away." But that's when things got dangerous. That night, Naomi's motel room was ransacked. Laptop gone. Notes burned. Windows shattered. They didn't take the drives, she kept them on her. But it was a message. I showed up seconds after it happened. Found her sitting in the corner, knees hugged to her chest glass in her hair. "You okay?" I asked softly. She nodded. "Barely. I knew it was coming," she whispered. "I just thought I had more time." I crouched in front of her. "You're not alone." She looked at me, then really looked. "I'm scared." "So was she," I said. But she still walked to the store. Every damn morning. The next morning, I made a call I hadn't made in years to an old contact, someone I served with, a tech specialist, a hacker turned soldier. His name was Deeks. He owed me. When he answered, he didn't even say hello. I saw the footage. "You ready to drop the bomb?" "Not yet," I said. "I need one more thing. I need you to find that third officer, the one who watched and walked away." There was a pause. "Then send me everything. I'll find him." 3 days later, Deeks called back. His voice was grim. "Name's Officer Wesley Rourke. New transfer from Georgia. Clean record. But he resigned the day after your mom's death. Where is he?" "Living in a trailer outside Montgomery. Off-grid. Quiet. Can you get me his number?" "You're not going to threaten him, are you?" I paused. "No. I'm going to give him a chance to tell the truth." The next day, I drove to Montgomery. The trailer was rusted, surrounded by woods. Quiet. The kind of place people go to forget who they used to be. Rourke opened the door slowly. He had stubble on his face and fear in his eyes. He recognized me immediately. "I didn't pull the trigger," he said. "I know," I replied. "But you saw them shove her, and you walked away." He looked down. I didn't know what to do. I stepped closer. "You know what to do now." He hesitated. "Then, yeah." 3 days later, he stood beside me in a national press conference. He told the world what he saw, that he was warned to stay silent, that the culture inside the department encouraged lying, that the moment Dent shoved my mother Griggs smirked, that they joked about old black folks thinking they're bulletproof. He cried on camera, but his tears weren't cowardice. They were a beginning. That night I returned to Mama's porch. Naomi sat beside me, nursing a bruise from the motel attack. The stars overhead shimmered like watchful eyes. "She'd be proud of you," Naomi said. I nodded slowly. "I'm not done." She smiled faintly. "I know, because now the courts were watching. The country was waking up. But the empire hadn't fallen yet, and I was just getting started. It started with a spark, one clip, one voice, one name. But by now, it was a wildfire. My mother's death wasn't just a story anymore. It was a movement. From Brooklyn to Baton Rouge, protesters marched with signs bearing her photo. Elderly women with walkers carried banners that read, "Loretta could have been me." Celebrities spoke out. Athletes took knees. Churches rang bells in her name. But back in the town where she took her last breath, the police barricaded their doors, and Griggs and Dent had vanished. We learned from internal whistleblowers that the department temporarily relocated them due to threats. Translation: they were hiding, protected by the very system that enabled them. But I had something they didn't. I had training. Naomi and I drove through back roads and motel parking lots chasing leads like smoke trails. It wasn't long before Deeks, my hacker friend, pinged an ATM transaction linked to Dent's burner card used just outside a cabin in southern Missouri. We didn't tell the police. They would have tipped them off. We went ourselves. It was a cold morning. Trees bare, wind sharp. Naomi stayed back in the Jeep. I approached alone. Cabin looked deserted. But I knew better. Footsteps inside. I knocked. Silence. Then the door creaked open. Griggs. No badge, no smug uniform. Just a hoodie, sweatpants, and a shotgun in his hand. We locked eyes. "Marcus," he said flatly. "You remember her name?" I asked. He smirked. Old lady got mouthy. The rage flared in my chest, but I kept it buried. "You're going to turn yourselves in." He laughed. "You gonna make me soldier boy." I stepped closer. "I'm not here for revenge. I'm here for justice. But if you even think about raising that gun—" I leaned in, voice low. "I'll show you why Delta Force trains to end wars, not start them." He flinched. A door creaked behind him. Dent stepped out. You're bluffing, Dent sneered. Try me. Then Naomi walked up from behind me. Whole world's watching, boys. You don't turn yourselves in now. The footage we have gets sent with names, GPS logs, retirement plans, family addresses. Dent's smirk dropped. You wouldn't. Naomi raised her phone. Already did. That was the moment it happened. Griggs's shoulders sagged. He dropped the gun. Dent cursed and punched the wall. I didn't smile. I didn't celebrate. I just said, let's go. They were booked at the county jail that afternoon. The crowd outside tripled in size. Naomi filmed everything. I watched them walk into the station handcuffed heads low. But this wasn't victory. Not yet. The trial began 3 weeks later. Security was tight. Media everywhere. Protesters outside in droves, some praying, others screaming, all demanding justice. I sat in the front row every day. Not in uniform, just a son. The prosecution played the body cam footage. Not just once, 4 times from every angle. The jury saw my mother fall, heard her final breath, and then the voice of Officer Rourke testifying live. Eyes red, voice shaking. I should have stopped it, but I didn't, and it's haunted me every day since. The courtroom was still. Dent's lawyer tried to spin it. She was uncooperative. She resisted. She matched a suspect. But the defense unraveled fast. Naomi's reports, internal records, the secret training videos, all presented, all undeniable. Then it was my turn. I took the stand. My hands were steady. My mother wasn't a threat. She was a woman walking to buy groceries, and 2 men with badges decided her life didn't matter. I paused. Do you know what it's like to serve your country, only to come home and find out your country won't serve your mother? I looked straight at the jury. They didn't just kill her. They tried to erase her, cover it up, pretend it didn't matter. But she mattered to me, to this town. And now she matters to the world. I stepped down in silence, but I could feel the tide turning. The verdict came 3 days later. Guilty. 2nd-degree murder for Dent. Voluntary manslaughter and conspiracy for Griggs. The courtroom erupted in gasps and cries, some angry, some relieved. I didn't cheer. I just closed my eyes and whispered, "We did it, Mama." That night, Naomi and I returned to the spot where Mama died. The city had turned it into a memorial. Candles, flowers, photos, letters. Someone had painted her face on the wall. Bright, bold, crowned with blue roses. Naomi stood beside me holding her phone. "We're live," she said. I nodded. To everyone watching, I said, looking into the camera, "This isn't the end. Justice doesn't begin with a verdict. It begins when we change the system that lets people like Dent and Griggs put on a badge in the first place." I looked down at the street. The same cracked pavement where she lay. She wasn't just my mother. She was all our mothers. Naomi's hand brushed mine. "I'm proud of you," she whispered. I nodded. But deep down I knew this fight wasn't just about Loretta Daniels anymore. It was about everyone who'd ever been silenced, and the whole world was finally listening. Justice is a strange thing. It doesn't come all at once. It doesn't wear a robe or sit behind a bench no matter what they tell you. Sometimes it shows up in pieces, in testimonies, in trembling voices, in gasps from a jury box. And sometimes, just sometimes, it hits like a sledgehammer. That trial didn't just shake our town. It cracked open a system. After the guilty verdict, the courtroom descended into chaos. Protesters outside cheered. News anchors tripped over words trying to explain how 2 police officers, white officers, had just been convicted in the death of an elderly black woman. But it wasn't just the verdict. It was what came next. The judge, an old man with a gravel voice and tired eyes, did something no one expected. Before issuing the sentence, he paused, took off his glasses, and spoke not to the defendants but to the court. This case, he said, is not isolated. It is not a blip. It is the result of years of failed oversight, failed accountability, and failed leadership. He turned toward the gallery. I have served as a judge for 30 years. I have sentenced drug dealers, murderers, and thieves. But today, I sentence officers who were trained not just in law, but in evasion, in abuse, in silence. He faced Dent and Griggs. May the weight of your uniforms never leave your conscience. And then, life in prison for Dent without parole. 35 years for Griggs for manslaughter and conspiracy. The courtroom was silent. And then, applause. Not for vengeance, for truth. The ripples spread fast. Within weeks, the state attorney general opened a formal investigation into the entire precinct. 6 other officers were placed on administrative leave. 2 retired early, 1 resigned and vanished. And the police chief, he stepped down under pressure, citing health reasons. Yeah, right. Naomi's coverage earned her national acclaim. CNN called her the truth teller of the South. She didn't care. She said the only title that mattered was friend. That meant more to me than anything, but the biggest blow came from someone I didn't expect. Captain Willis, the same man who'd ignored Mama's complaints about Griggs months earlier, who looked the other way. He called a press conference. I was complicit in the silence. I let officers under my command walk unchecked. I didn't protect Loretta Daniels. I didn't protect the truth. He choked up. I failed as a leader. I resign effective immediately. And I will testify in any investigation going forward. That broke something wide open. For the first time, a law enforcement officer wasn't just retiring quietly. He was confessing. But what no one saw coming was what came out of the Federal Review, a stack of reports, 3 inches thick. The DOJ released it publicly. Their conclusion, a deeply rooted culture of racism. Abuse of authority and obstruction of justice existed within the department for more than a decade. They recommended a full restructuring, mandatory retraining, civilian oversight boards, body cam transparency laws statewide. It was the kind of systemic shift we'd only dreamed of. And it began with Mama. Weeks later, I was invited to speak before Congress. I didn't want to go. What could I possibly say in that marble cage of politics that hadn't already been said by her silence? But Naomi convinced me. She wouldn't just stay home, Marcus. She'd speak. For all the ones who couldn't. So I went, dressed in a plain black suit. No medals, no uniform. I stood in front of lawmakers and cameras and told them about Loretta Daniels, about how she hummed hymns on morning walks, about how she never raised her voice even when they raised their guns, and about how justice didn't knock on our door. We broke it open. Afterward, people flooded me with messages, some from mothers who'd lost sons, some from sons who'd buried mothers. One message stood out. From a retired cop, I let things slide. For years. I didn't speak, but after your testimony I turned in 3 tapes. You changed me. I stared at that message for hours, because justice is never one moment. It's a chain, one brave act pulling the next. Then came the letter, handwritten, no return address, inside. A page from my mother's old church journal. It read, one day they'll try to forget us, to bury our names. But even roses grow from graves. I sat on the porch that night holding that letter, Naomi beside me. The world had changed, but grief still clung to the air like smoke after a fire. I miss her, I said. Naomi didn't answer. She just laid her hand on mine. And in that silence I knew Mama's voice hadn't vanished. It had just found a new home. A year later, spring came early, not just to the town, but to me. There's something about healing that sneaks up on you. One day you're numb, the next you feel the wind again. You smell rain before it hits. You hear birds in the morning and realize for the first time in months you're still here. And it started strangely in a garden. Mama's garden. She used to call it her little piece of heaven. It wasn't big, just a patch near the fence line where sunlight soaked the earth from dawn till dusk. Blue roses, yellow tulips, tall sunflowers leaning toward God. For weeks after the trial, the soil sat untouched. I'd walk past it, feel the ache in my chest, and keep going. But one morning I stopped. I knelt. I dug my hands into the dirt like I used to as a boy when she'd teach me how to plant a bulb like it was a prayer. That's when Naomi showed up. "Thought you said you weren't the gardening type," she said. I looked up, smiled. I lied. She sat beside me in the dirt, hands folded in her lap. "Can I help?" "Always." We planted together. Tulips, marigolds, even lavender. Quiet, steady, sacred. And in that quiet I realized something. We weren't just rebuilding a garden. We were rebuilding a future. The town had changed too. The mural of Mama, painted by local youth, became a landmark. The street where she died. Renamed Loretta Daniels Way. The library added a civil rights section in her honor. Inside, a photo of her standing in front of the church, smiling eyes full of grace. And the police department completely restructured. New leadership, civilian boards, body cam live stream systems piloted statewide. And Griggs and Dent, still behind bars, forgotten by the world, but remembered by justice. One day I got a letter from the governor, an official commendation. Not for my service overseas, but for civic bravery and contribution to statewide justice reform. I stared at the paper, then tucked it in Mama's Bible, because the real reward wasn't a title. It was this, that no one would ever forget her name again. Naomi stayed in town, said DC was too loud. She started a podcast, interviewed families, activists, and victims of police abuse across the country. She called it Voices That Don't Fade. Episode 1. Loretta. She interviewed me in the garden. Camera on a tripod. 2 lawn chairs. Sunflowers swaying behind us. "What would you say to the younger version of yourself?" She asked if you could go back. I looked into the camera. Don't wait for the system to care. Make it care. She nodded, but didn't stop there. "And what would you say to the world?" I paused. "Then, raise your sons to speak. Raise your daughters to lead. And when someone tells you to stay quiet, don't." Months later, I visited Mama's grave. Same hill, same stone, same wind. I brought her blue roses. Kneeling, I whispered, "They know who you are now, Mama. They say your name." And for the first time in a long time, I felt peace. As I walked back toward the house, a little girl on a bicycle stopped in front of the gate. She waved. "Are you the soldier man?" she asked. I smiled. "Used to be." She pointed to the garden. "My teacher said that's where the flowers for Miss Loretta's mural came from." I nodded. "You want to plant one?" Her eyes lit up. "Can I?" I handed her a trowel. She dug beside me, laughing dirt on her cheeks. Naomi came out with lemonade, and in that small moment, under a warm sun, with flowers blooming and stories still being told, I realized this wasn't the end. This was the legacy. Loretta Daniels was more than a mother. She was a voice, a light, a symbol of dignity in a world that tried to silence her. Her death wasn't the end of her story. It was the beginning of a national reckoning. Because justice doesn't arrive when the powerful allow it. It arrives when ordinary people refuse to back down. This story reminds us that the measure of a life isn't in how it ends, but in how it awakens others. Speak the truth. Stand for what's right. And never, ever underestimate the power of one voice to shake a "if this story moved, you don't let it stop here." Subscribe to our channel for more powerful, true-to-life dramas. Comment below. What does justice mean to you? Share this story to keep Loretta Daniels' name alive because change begins with awareness.